Welcome to For the Record, which is a conversation series where we talk to music heads about the stories and the music that makes them. Today we're speaking with the one and only Dianna Loevner. It's great to have you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Of course, to begin these things, I always like to start at the beginning and just get a sense of you and your story and when your relationship with music began, and then we can work our way forward from there.
Cool. My name's Dianna Loevner. Disco Diana has been a nickname on my teen. I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I got into music through my older sister. She's 10 and a half years older than me. She was your quintessential 90s raver, but she was kind of like that fly girl. Her nickname was DKNY Caroline, and she, as you would imagine, would rock DKNY and the Claiborne and Nautica with like custom kickwares back in the day. So it was a lot of house, jungle, and kind of like around those realms that I really got into it and was hanging out with her and her friends. And then, yeah, I got into the music myself as a teenager.
Was
But
that still in Pittsburgh?
this was in Pittsburgh. Yeah, so I was about 6 when I was like really exposed to electronic, and I'll never forget just being around all of these like, just like when you're watching the movie Groove, like kids that looked like that. And yeah, my sister even took me to a rave out called Family Affair in Ohio, like in 1997. Put me on a
Well,
speaker. So it's always something I was super curious about. And then as I started growing, electronic music wasn't in the peripheral. In that time, it was more like underground. So I got into like classic rock and hip hop and like punk, post punk, emo, and then I found the rave as a 16-year-old.
Right. What were some of the other stuff that you were listening to when kind of the interim where electronic music wasn't the focus, and you know across like classic rock, hip hop, punk, those stuff? Like, what are some of the bands that you think about most fondly from listening?
I love old school hip hop, and coming from Pittsburgh, it's something that's really prevalent in the scene there. I went to high school with Wiz Khalifa. I grew up with Mac Miller. I was at his bar mitzvah. I was really into kind of like the Jay Dilla, the Nas, stuff like Cameron, and even stuff like early Eminem, like his Infinite album. So those were things that I'm still constantly listening to. And then being like a nice Jewish girl from Pittsburgh, I loved my classic rock, like from Hendrix and Joplin to even. I mean, I wasn't one of the Dave Matthews Band kids, but stuff like that was definitely in that sound. It was very prominent in that era. I'm
Mhm.
32, so like the early 2000s.
Mhm. Totally. I remember it well.
I'm sure you do.
And then, yeah, um, yeah, I remember going. Yeah, I was working at a radio station in Chicago. It was my first job outside of college, and I went to a Dave show because I was working at for the radio station, and talking to people there. They were like, "This is my like 208th Dave Matthews show." Like
Mhm.
huge Dave heads. People are obsessed.
It's like Dave, Fish, The Dead. It's funny because it's like everyone can recite how many shows they've been to. And babe, like, you're like me. Can you tell me how many raves or electronic parties you've been to?
No.
Probably not. Too busy having fun thinking
Yeah,
about it.
indeed, indeed. Um, cool. So when did you move to New York, and like what and also like what did you transition like back into electronic music? How did that begin?
Sure. I got into electronic when I was 16 and real in Pittsburgh it was really like proper raves and kind of like I guess the it was like the beginning of candy or like candy rave, have you? um, but that was like things from old school spots that they would use that my sister went to back in the day, like this one place called the Irish Center to underneath bridges to kind of to even like vets halls. And then I went to school in DC, Washington, DC, and that was an interesting time because there are some institutions there that were still around, like 18th Street Lounge, that was owned by Eric Hilton of the Avery Corporation, to then new clubs opening, like U Street Music Hall, that was Jesse Titsworth's venue, and this guy, I'm forgetting his last name. Anyways, the club is now defunct, and Flash opened then. And I worked at both of those clubs, and I worked in some undergrounds. Moved to New York after school. So I moved to New York in 2013. And the music was always something that I went to create community. I'd been spending so much time in New York since I was a little kid. So my sister moved to Manhattan in 1999 that I was already going out to things and had created community here through it and was able to see how I was able to see what the scene was like in 2013, which I felt was very like, Burning Man was en vogue and like that sort of stuff in Resolute and Black Market. And I kind of like jumped into those sorts of arenas. I moved here.
Cool. Cool. And how did that evolve? Like how did it evolve from being in the scene, finding community to uh, promoting shows, having a more intimate relationship, with these communities and helping to cultivate it with your own vision.
Totally. I guess if I could retreat a little bit, when I studied public relations and marketing at American University in DC, I truly majored in that curriculum because I was doing promotion for raves and I was in Pittsburgh. So I'll never forget, it was before graduating, I was interning at this really like stiff PR firm that, you guessed it, like it had a political beat because it was DC. I was sitting there and I was like, oh my God, what did I do? And I've been trying to carve my way out of PR since. But I preface with this story because I really always wanted to work in music. And at the time of graduation, I was trying to go more into kind of a more commercial dance music sector as a full-time job, and I was finding that it was very male dominated. So it seemed, I mean, that could totally not be a true factual statement, but that was something I was experiencing in a lot of places I was interviewing with, kind of like in the ultra records realm, so to speak. So I ended up working in different fields. Like I worked for a men's skincare brand, I worked for Paper Magazine, I worked at a PR digital agency, and then I decided when I worked at Soho House that I would start kind of doing my own events. And that's when I was like, oh shit, like I don't need to work for someone else. I could kind of work for myself and make an impact. And then when COVID started and as it prolonged, I started creating more intimate kind of pop-up events, whether they were on rooftops or things upstate, like under 100 people. And then I got together with my current partners and we decided to develop a more comprehensive party brand at once the regulations were lifted for COVID, and that's when we created Mizz Softee.
Oh,
Yeah. So yeah, to answer your question, I think it was a natural development, but it came from not being able to find a job in the field to then realizing you could just do it yourself.
yeah, yeah, that's the spirit, right? That's amazing.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, tell us more about Mizz Softee and the vision. Like, how did you orient the brand? How did you come together with your partners around this specific vision, and how has that manifested the past couple of years?
Totally. So my two partners are Samuel Fish and Henry Chow. Henry Chow is from Houston, Texas, and he had a party called Crossroads That party was the longest running warehouse party in Houston in the early 2000s. And Samuel is from Portland, Oregon, and he has a party called Outer Orbit, which was a bit smaller. It was one of the first regular events that was taking place at Magic City in Greenpoint, Brooklyn. Rest in peace. It's a very cute and cool DIY venue. Had a lot of character and soul to it. And Sam really wanted to do a bigger party, and I just wanted to do something that was more public facing and more proper. I'm not the music encyclopedia or tech nerd, but I'm a gregarious girl about town, so to say. Um, and we kind of like we figured that there is a niche for something like this. I have a strong gay community around me, and I feel like pre-COVID there was a strong line between gay and straight events. So we wanted to create something that was a little bit of a hybrid in terms of music curation and also people curation. We figured that this was a good party that filled that void. So we also, when we were thinking about names, it was the time of COVID, and it was when people were souping up trucks, putting in sound systems in them, and like just rolling around town. So I had made a joke to Sam, one of my partners. I was like, "Huh, why don't we like get an ice cream truck, put sound in it, and go about town?" It was simply a joke, but when we were brainstorming names, he's like, "Why don't we take that idea you have? We call this party Mizz Softee." So it's a play on Mr. Softee, which feels like it's a New York story. But then we created our own and then make her super psychedelic, which is also indicates that it's open to everyone in a way, and also connotates that it could have some trippy associations to it as well.
Yeah, I love that. So what has been, as you've developed in the Softy and thrown events, brought people together, what has been, one of the biggest challenges that you faced so far, and what has been the biggest joys? What's been the
The
biggest joy?
biggest challenge is definitely finances. I don't think people realize what goes into throwing a warehouse party in New York City. It's not like Resident Advisor put out something about a year ago or so, and it was talking about financials of throwing a party. Those numbers, you can triple or even quadruple them in New York. Also in Europe, a lot of things aren't as DIY as they might be here. But I digress. We're just lucky if we're breaking even. A lot of times we really do it for the love of it. And there's not like a ton of clubs like there are in some other cities. I mean, there are, and especially for America, we're doing great, but it's like creating your own pop-up club for the night. But with that, the parties are on average about 16,000 $16,000. And who's financing them? Us. So, you do a party where you're not doing that well, and you could still be trying to make up for it months in the future. So that's start with the negative, but it's the reality, and I think the more awareness around that could totally deflate the notion when people are like, "Can I get guest lists from me and my six friends that have never been to the party before that aren't in music and that have full-time jobs?" Sorry,
Yeah,
just needed to be realistic. But the positive
totally.
thing, yeah, dude. But it's okay. It's real, and I just don't think people realize because unless you're producing, you're not that those thoughts don't even come to mind. But the positive thing has really been community. Like the, the bonds we've been able to make have globally have been amazing, and they're real, and it's doing something for the right reasons, and the opportunities and friendships that come out of that are sick. Like I've been able to work multiple festivals abroad from this brand and be able to really connect with people in a way that a lot of people don't think in their adult life they'll be able to get close to people in that regard. So that's been really special.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, and that kind of opportunity, or just a reason to connect with people and build community, travel around the world, orient yourself toward different cultures and subcultures is really priceless. But yeah, to your point, I think at large, a lot of people are unaware of the economics music industry, how they affect the people who are truly doing it for the right reasons, whether it's the artists, the DJs, the promoters, the independent labels. It's really difficult to make it work financially, and
Yeah, totally. And what's interesting is in New York, I'm not sure about the greater America, getting grants. I'm not I'm sure that they exist, but it does seem like when I talk to friends and throughout some countries in Europe, there does seem like more ease to get artist grants or cultural grants for different things. I think there needs to be more education about that within our field because I think that could help finance these different projects. And obviously, it comes down to language. You can't say, I'm throwing a rave, but I'm throwing like a cultural event and curating people from all over the world. So, more
yeah,
awareness and education on that. What tools and
yeah,
resources there are would be really helpful.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like I know Canada has a great arts program as well in terms of arts grants. I think it's sort of an institutional issue, and a lack, and like, at least in the US, it's just lack, just lack of an embrace of the arts, which just flat.
Yeah, or like, Keegan, maybe it's just more private finances. Like my mom, for example, has always been a supporter, but that's an individual, you know? And I think a lot of people might maybe a lot of like, 70-year plus people are doing it with association to an institution like the Frick Museum or MoMA. So anyways, I think that yeah, I think moving forward it'd be really cool to be on the forefront of figuring that out.
Yeah, totally. Well, thank you for doing that work. Super important.
Yeah.
Um, cool. So I'm going to switch over to the Q&A portion of this chat. And first, I'm curious if you can talk about how you discover music, and that can extend from when you're promoting a show and filling out a lineup to just discovering music to listen to at home. I'd be curious about both.
Totally. I think with the brand that we're working on, Mizz Softee, we're really trying to bring artists that are popular in their regions or they're on the rise, people that are musically sophisticated, however, may not have had their presence in New York, or if they have, put them on a program that could be a bit more interesting. And also kind of tying up like a queer tone, but not, but ensuring that we're developing it in an interesting way. So we'll follow other different brands that we find to be interesting or people that we see as a parallel to ours in different markets. And then we'll go off of that and then sort of go in the rabbit hole and we'll try to attend things that will feature people that we might not have heard before. Because I think hearing people in person versus digitally or on a record, it always makes an impact,
Totally.
especially if you're booking them for a show. And then myself personally, I've gotten a little spoiled dating and living with an artist where I find a lot of music exploration in my living room versus me hunting for it on my own.
That's amazing. What a perk.
Yeah, I guess. It's making me a little bit lazy on that forefront, to be honest, but it's like living with a music encyclopedia.
I mean, that's amazing. Cool. Uh, what is the music community that you're particularly fond of that you want to give a shout to?
I need to give a shout to Jacob Mihan, who does the Buttons Party. He's been doing it for 7 years now, but I think he does it with a lot of love and a lot of integrity, and he's one of the founders behind Whole. He actually made our first party in July 2021, but comes from Chicago actually. Worked at Gramophone, and he's someone that's brought a lot of artists up, and predominantly the queer space, but just in general. And I, I just see that he's done things with great that might not get as much recognition as he deserves.
Cool. All right. Who are three artists of note that you've heard, for the first time in the past year-ish?
That I've been really into.
Yeah, just like three that you've come across and it's like, yeah, hell yeah, this is awesome.
Yeah, totally. I saw Kodomo. He's one of the founders of Party. It's a party based in Mexico City and LA. And this guy is really good. Like, it's something when Mexico City has a big scene, but to be honest, it's not something when I think on the forefront, like super popular electronic music. And I saw him perform over the summer, and he had so much charisma and stage presence. It was like going back to that comment of if you're booking someone for a show, I think part of it is also them performing in a way. And that was really super. I actually, literally, the next day, I went to email his agent to book him, see if I could book him for one of our parties. And unfortunately, he can't come to the United States for a few years due to some visa passport stuff. But that's number one. Number two, Specky Webu. He's an artist from Rotterdam. He kind of created his own alien techno genre. He comes from the old school gabber community. However, it's not gabber at all. He takes you sort of on this psychedelic journey. And he played our party in June, and then we were with him, and he played Sustain, this it's the same release of festival in upstate New York that I know you've been to. Not sure about the other listeners. But he is a really special artist and someone, if folks have not seen him perform, it's just very unique, and it takes you into a journey. Um, and then a third artist. Let me think. Um, I actually saw Little Miss Twink this summer, and it's someone that is also that it's specific because it's an artist that goes is part of the Gen Z realm, also in Chicago. But what's interesting about this artist is they blend a lot of kind of old school genres, like a UKG meets something very contemporary, meets a little bit of techno, but then goes into like a little bit of hyper pop. And I think it's hard to blend all those genres and do it right. And this person does do it right.
Amazing. Good trio. I love that. Um,
Yeah, it's hot right now.
um, who is the most underappreciated artist from your favorite music decade?
Oh man. Um, I think that the thing with artists is, and now it's a bit oversaturated. You see a lot of people that have created the parties. They're not the people that are going to be in the know, but they're people that put a lot of work into the parties. If that answers that question, this isn't somewhat like these folks that I'm gonna say that are. I'm gonna give an example. Like for example, the guys behind Nowadays and Mr. Sunday. I'm not the biggest follower of their music. However, I do think that that's an example of what I just presented, where perhaps those guys should be more globe touring artists. However, they did found like a party institution and one of the main clubs in the city right now. But I do find that often, and like you see it with like Stevo behind Free Rotation and other pinnacle parties.
Yeah, yeah,
So
absolutely.
So I guess there's a lot of hype in music right now, and some people might be on a platform because of their aesthetic versus musically. or what they've contributed to the community. And that's something I hope in the future will dissipate more. But that is something I've observed, to be honest with you.
Yeah, yeah. If only we could measure value and allocate, our like cultural, whatever renown just through cultural contributions instead of, building an Instagram aesthetic or something like that. That's a really
Yeah,
good point.
yeah, and I wonder truly. Like, I know Stephen Clavier, whose birthday it is today. He's the programmer at Public Records in Paragon. He was going off on this, and it is a real thing. I think a lot of people you're also finding who will be booked. They'll come to the party, they'll play, they'll leave, and there's not like an appreciation there. So that's something I try not to have when I'm hosting an artist, but it's something that I think more and more people are seeing too. And it's sort of that ego and that generation of artists or artists that might be taking multiple gigs in a weekend or even a night without communicating to
Mm,
their host.
mm, yeah. Um, cool. Okay, here's the big question of the show. You're going to a desert island and you get to bring 3 records with you. What are
I got Jocelyn Enriquez, A Little Bit of Ecstasy, is number one. Number two, Orbital, Halcyon, On and On, and three, Physical Therapy. Oh my God, it's the one with him in the cowboy hat. Oh, It Takes a Village, I believe it's called.
they? Well,
Um,
I think that was the quickest response we've ever had. Well done.
oh my God, it's like I'm one of those people when I like something, I like it and I exhaust it, and it's like I exhaust it so much that it actually doesn't get old for me.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, that's the mark of something that well, you'd want to bring to a desert island. You don't want to get tired of it because you don't know if you're ever getting off.
Totally. And I actually have all of them on
Um,
vinyl.
nice.
Mhm.
Cool. So before we go, I want to give space to your work and your projects, and just for people listening, if they are interested in getting involved with what you're doing, following along, coming to a Mizz Softee show, where are the best places for them to do that?
Awesome. You could just follow us on Instagram at Mizz Softee. We also have a soft serve, which is our email list. We will send things out there ahead of time. If you go on just www.mizzsofty.com, sign up. Like we always do like a $15 ticket for folks that follow that see the email first. So I'd sign up. And resident advisor, those are kind of like the three main things as of right now. And we're doing a party October 13th in Brooklyn, October 19th in Amsterdam for ADE, and November 10th in Brooklyn.
Nice. Cool. Are you going to the one in Amsterdam?
Yeah, we got the opportunity last week, so we got our flights and we'll be out there for 6 days.
Congratulations. That's awesome. If you ever start a
Thank
show in
you.
London, let me know.
Wait, are you in London now?
Yeah.
Wait, what? I
Yeah.
didn't
I've
realize
been
that. Cool.
yeah, I've
I
been
will
living in
keep.
London for almost 2 years. Yeah.
Oh my God, amazing. We will sidebar on that after this.
Amazing. Yeah, that sounds good. Um, and yeah, last question for you. Now that you've been on the show and have an understanding kind of like what this is about, who else would be a good person to bring on as a guest?
This guy Mark, he does the merge parties in Brooklyn. He started at the same time as us, and he's doing a really awesome job. I think he'd be great. I think Aurora Halal would obviously be awesome with her work that she's done with Sistine and personal projects. It'd actually be kind of fun to have her and her boyfriend Gareth, DJ G, because he's the GM at Nowadays. The Giorgio, he does the Creatures Party in London. He would be an amazing person and also local to you in London. He's also Georgian. Um, I think I haven't been to the party, but I had dinner with him over the summer, and it sounds like what he's doing in London is really sick. Um, yeah, maybe Jacob, who I mentioned earlier, who does buttons and whole. He's based in Berlin.
Oh, so many good folks.
I'm happy to do intros too.
Yeah, appreciate you.
Thank you.
Well, Diana, this has been lovely. It's been so good catching up and learning things about you that I've never known. There's always a good excuse for interviewing somebody, getting to know them a bit better. So thank you for being on the show and bringing your good vibes as always.
Thank you so much. It's an honor, and I appreciate catching up with you. I hope to do so in person. I feel like such a jerko. I didn't realize you were in Europe. Oh my gosh.
No worries, no worries. It's not like I announced it to the whole world or anything. So,
What are you doing
but
there?
more of the same stuff. Writing about music, playing music, doing great amount of stuff. Same old, basically, just across the pond.
Cool. Awesome.
I'll be back in New York. Well, I actually don't have a date anytime soon, but I will get back there because it's still feels like home always. And yeah, we should sidebar about coming to London and all that stuff and continue to catch up.
Yes. Totally. Oh, speaking of another person, Robbie, who does the high hoops party in Manchester, could also be another good one. Or UK.
So many good people. Cool. Well, that's all we got for today. Thank you, Diana, again for this. And yeah, I'll shoot you a note after this so we can keep chatting.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks, Diana. Be well. Take care.
Too. Ciao, ciao.